The attack force that Morris flew with was a mirror of the one flying from Hokkaido, targeted at the Soviet military port of Vladivostok. Both attack groups were built around a quartet of slender B-1 bombers, alongside an escorting fighter squadron and electronic countermeasure aircraft. The B-1 Lancer had been built to replace the aging but venerable B-52. Its original purpose was long-range delivery of nuclear payloads to strategic targets deep within the Soviet Union. Now, these vast bomb bays were occupied with thousands of pounds of laser-guided glide munitions, ready to be scattered over the Soviet port facilities. Alongside the B-1s were a pair of EF-111As. The EF-111A, or Raven, was an electronic warfare specialist, built to house the latest and greatest in information warfare sensors, jammers, and spoofers. What had begun its life as a Vietnam-era tactical bomber called the Aardvark had found a new lease on life as what was now affectionately called the Sparkvark by those who operated them. These two Ravens flew just above and ahead of the B-1s. Their high-tech detection and jammer suites were engaged with monitoring and neutralizing the extensive air defense assets of the Soviet ports. The Soviets were masters of defensive air warfare, utilizing overlapping networks of detection and anti-air missile batteries to form a protective umbrella around the entirety of their nation. The Ravens had their work cut out for them, pinpointing dozens of individual sources of radio traffic, while detecting and jamming radar transmitters. Technological wonders like the Ravens weren't enough alone to get the bombers into range safely. Escorting the core of the attack force was a squadron of missile-laden combat fighters, like the one Major Morris flew. It would fall to him and his pilots to protect the B-1s and Ravens when things inevitably turned ugly. Despite the impressive array of military technology deployed here, the raid was particularly vulnerable at present. To avoid detection by the Soviet search radars ringing Kaliningrad, the American pilots had to fly as low as possible, almost low enough to surf. When combined with the radar spoofing the Ravens provided, Morris hoped it would be enough to mask their approach until the last minute. With a little luck, the Soviets wouldn't know the Americans were here until they were right on top of them. Despite the relative cover his low altitude afforded him, worry itched at the back of Morris's mind. For all its cutting-edge flash and glamour, modern air warfare was in many ways little different than even the most primitive forms of combat. From muskets to bows and arrows to F-15s, the same adage held true. He who holds the high ground wins. For air-to-air engagements, height advantage was significant. Height granted both extended detection and observation capability, but also longer range and greater speed for missile launches. With a thinner atmosphere to contend with, missiles launched from higher altitudes could go farther faster, and sometimes struck without warning. After all, what was a missile but a modern-day javelin? Morris tried not to think about it. Focusing his attention on his instrument panel, he worried only about keeping formation and altitude. Those problems were out of his hands right now. 5 minutes to Point Charlie. The voice was just above a whisper in Morris's helmet, but came through as clear as a shouted command. His senses were all on edge. It felt as though his skin were electrically charged, and every slight change seemed to burst in his mind. After all the training, all the waiting, it was finally here. This was the thrill of fighting, the fear of combat. Morris flexed his hands one at a time, working tense muscles and cracking his knuckles. From Morris's vantage point in the cockpit, the Baltic Sea looked like a turbulent oil slick. Only the white caps of chopping waves broke the inky blackness, set starkly against the warm watercolors of the fading daylight in the sky. In another hour,